Tottenham target Marcel Sabitzer is reportedly looking to leave RB Leipzig this summer and could be available for just €15 million as his contract runs into its final 12 months. Tottenham are also looking at a defensive revamp, according to Alistair Gold, as Joachim Andersen and Nikola Milenkovic are again mentioned as targets. Talks continue with Marcus Thuram of Borussia Mönchengladbach, according to Mohamed Bouhafsi, and of course all those other links that we're having, the rumours. We're going to talk about all of them tonight. I'm delighted to say, first of all, I'm joined by Jamie from Daily Hotspur. We'll have Danny Kyriakou with us very, very shortly. But first of all, Jamie, thanks so much for your time tonight. How are you getting on?
No, my pleasure. Thank you very much for having me on. Yeah, looking forward to it. Obviously, as always at Spurs, lots and lots of transfer rumours. And of course, with a new director of football in place from Italy, I'm sure there's going to be lots and lots of transfer stories to discuss. So, I'm looking forward to tonight's show for sure.
Thank you very much. And look, again, always good to have you on. And those rumours are there. We get it every single summer with not just Spurs, it is every club that has the countless rumours that are there. But I suppose we'll start with the story of the week, and that is the one, like I said at the beginning there. Marcel Sabitzer is looking to leave RB Leipzig this summer, and he could be available for just €15 million as his contract runs into its final year. This is coming, I think, from the Athletic UK. Fairly reliable source, the majority of their journalists, and Sabitzer after a fantastic start in the Euros as well. How would you feel Spurs went back in for Sabitzer this summer?
Yeah, I mean, he's a guy I kind of wanted for a very long time. I think I remember seeing him at, I think it was the first leg in our Champions League clash with Leipzig, and I was really, really impressed. I thought, for me, I remember kind of messaging my mates and saying, he was the one guy that was really running the show. Of course, there were other players in that team like Timo Werner, where kind of the spotlight was really on. But for me, I thought Marcel Sabitzer was brilliant. And then, of course, he absolutely tore us apart in the second leg. So, for me, he's a guy who I do really like the look of. Obviously, he's a very versatile midfielder as well. You can play in a number of different positions in terms of central midfield and then the attacking areas. So, for me, he's a guy I would absolutely love to see at Spurs. And, of course, been linked a number of times. And as you said, that fee would, that's a steal for any club. So I think any club that goes for that sort of value. But I think when you see that sort of value and you see the quality of that sort of player, I think there's going to be some sort of competition. So, but I'd absolutely love him at Spurs for sure.
Yeah, speaking of the competition there, it's a point I wanted to bring up, and it's one that concerns me. Like I said, he's had a good start to the Euros, got a fantastic assist for Liner's goal in their opening game against North Macedonia they played. And my fear now is there's always those one or two players that play incredibly in the Euros, and all of a sudden everybody wants them. In the last Euros, I think it was Alexander Golovin ended up going to Monaco. And this year it could be Sabitzer. And when people start to realise 12 months left in the contract, I think we could have a lot of competition there for him. Maybe the boat has sailed on Spurs being an attractive club to him, but in the past he's been reportedly wanting that move to Spurs, and a move to the Premier League I think could be attractive to anybody. But would you be concerned, I don't know, it'll come up with all of our moves, but us being in the Europa Conference League could be detrimental to our pursuit of him?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, look, all the top players, they're going to want to play in those top European competitions. I think the one thing for me is when we were linked with the managers like Antonio Conte, I think that was where you thought as though we'd be able to still attract those sort of players. But when you're bringing in, and again, no disrespect to him, but a manager like Paulo Fonseca, I'm not sure that's going to have that same level of attraction. So, I do worry in that sense. But then again, also you look at Antonio Conte. He seemed to be interested in Spurs still. It seems that we're an attractive club still. I'm not quite sure why, but I do worry, and as I said, I do think there'll be serious competition. I think if you look at the financial circumstances of football at the moment, I think clubs are going to look at that transfer fee for Sabitzer, and there will be serious competition. And I think they'll definitely. I'd be very surprised if Champions League clubs went after him this summer.
Yeah, no, I fully agree with you, and that is the biggest concern, like I said, that I do have. Another one is, look, we know the manager never has full control of transfers at Spurs. You can look at Pochettino signings, Mourinho signings under their eras. Yeah. There's some of those players that you think those managers wouldn't particularly want. And you could have that same sort of feeling when we've been linked with Marcel Sabitzer for the last 2 or 3 windows. So if we're going back in for him now, you would have to question whether or not he is a Paratici signing, whether he's a Fonseca signing. Now, I think he could fit very well into that kind of left centre midfielder role that Fonseca has currently been filled by Jordan Vertu in Roma, where on one side he's making those late runs forward, and Vertu having his best goal scoring season this year at Roma, but also been able to drop deep and kind of orchestrate the play from there as Roma try and build up from the left. Do you think, even though he may not be a signing that Paratici or Fonseca has specifically identified for Spurs, that he could still very well fit into that system Fonseca might utilise?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, look, he's, as I said, he's an absolute quality player, and again, his versatility. I'm sure he'd be able to play a number of different roles. And certainly would slot into any side, in my opinion. But as you said, I think that's the big thing. For me, I don't really care kind of what level Spurs are going for. I just hope that we're going back the manager in terms and Paratici in terms of getting the players they want. I think you look at last summer and the way that we kind of went about business. I think Gareth Bale was obviously brought in. Obviously as fans, we were delighted about that. And Daniel Levy, that was obviously him was pushing it. But we saw the manager didn't want him. And, he's ended up kind of spending so much time sat on the bench. And then we saw Joe Rodon as another example. Mourinho wanted Milan Skriniar, and we've got, we brought in Joe Rodon. So for me, it's absolutely crucial that we start bringing in players that the manager and Paratici have identified, because we can't afford to keep spending money on players that they're not going to use. But as we said, I think Sabitzer, he's a quality player, and I can't imagine many managers in the world, certainly at the level Spurs are at, would be turning him down.
Yeah, look, Joe, now that you mentioned Milan Skriniar there as well, two of our biggest targets that we missed out on, both having incredible starts to the Euros, with Skriniar getting on the score sheet as well in Slovakia's win against Poland. Then the Spurs players that are playing hot, Ben Davies was poor for Wales, Højbjerg, of course, missing that penalty for Denmark, although I think Harry Kane did have a very good performance. Just maybe Spurs ruin players more than we realise. But look, I digress for now. I mentioned there in the top as well, story from Alistair Gold and a number of other sources that Tottenham are prioritising the signing of a centre-back for manager Paulo Fonseca this summer. Again, some old names cropping up, with Alistair Gold saying we continue to look at Joachim Andersen and Nikola Milenkovic. I think it's a fairly basic question, but how important do you think it is that we get in a centre-back this summer?
No, for sure. And if you look at kind of the way that Paulo Fonseca has played, and you hear kind of what everyone's saying about him that's watched him, his sides really like to play on the break, and they like to really go and attack. So we're going to need central defenders that are going to be able to kind of cover that. We do need to go big in terms of, for that central defender. That absolutely has to be the priority. And if we are to go big in one position, it has to be this one. I do think we need a leader. I think that's the exact words that Alistair Gold has used as well. We need a guy to come in and kind of have that, because I think so many of the goals we conceded last year was because there was no one in the back line who was organising. There was no one really taking control. Even Lloris as the captain in the back line, he never really felt as though there was much organisation. So many goals, teams just walked through us. So for sure, it's this. Definitely our biggest area of concern, and we need a guy who's going to come in there and really organise that defence. So be interested to see who we go for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And I just forgot something there a minute ago. We had a super chat from Gary Mattingly before the stream started. So Gary, thank you very much for the £5 super chat. Says, I pray we get Marcel Sabitzer. I'm sure there's a lot of Spurs fans there that echo those sentiments as well. Anybody else, if you do want to guarantee your comments are read out, and that I'll discuss them here with Jamie and Danny when he jumps on as well. Please make sure to get in a super chat. You can use that $sign beside the live chat button. It's a good way to support the channel as well, and to get your comments and stuff read out. Make sure to hit a like in the stream as well while you were here. It is completely free and really helps us out. And if you want more content like this, plus the final days of Tottenham's pursuit of a manager, make sure to hit that subscribe button as well. But back to the conversation on centre back, I think, look, like you said, it's so important, and it's been important for a while. I think I think the fans noticed it, but maybe within the club they didn't quite realise just how much we'd miss Jan Vertonghen, which is kind of scary that it wasn't thought of in there. We haven't brought in a left-footed centre back, which is talk of us wanting again. But if we are going to be switching to that three at the back, with Paulo Fonseca plays, I think we need 2, maybe 3 centre backs, because Dyer doesn't fit in that. He's not good enough on the ball. Davinson Sanchez for the very same reason as well. I think Toby Alderweireld, very good on the ball. His diagonal passes are absolutely outstanding. But I'm thinking with that high line that Fonseca plays, maybe that recovery pace just isn't quite there for him. So I think it is extremely important for us to get some in. And I think it was Alistair Gold as well saying that if we sell one of our high-profile centre-backs or one of our main centre-backs, that's when we'll then move for a second. Who do you think would fit into that category of or actual most important centre-backs that we would need to invest in another one if they left?
That's a good question. I mean, in terms of who we've already got?
Yeah.
For me, the only 2 really that for sure I'd be keeping, and Joe Rodon, I think, is a guy that has really impressed me. I think it was disappointing the lack of opportunities he got under Jose Mourinho. But I think if you see the way he's played for Wales on occasions, some of the times he played for Spurs, I thought he was really, really impressive. So for sure, he's a guy that I'd like to see a lot more of. And Alderweireld, see, I'm still not potentially his biggest fan, but I still feel as though that he's still a decent player. In terms of playing out from the back, we know his ability in terms of his passing ability. So for sure, he's a guy that I look to keep. The others, potentially, any of them, unfortunately, I'd look to move. I think Tanganga as well was obviously a very good player, and yeah, he'd be one that I look to keep as well. But Sanchez and Dyer, I think those are two players that I'd certainly look to move on in the summer.
Yeah, I fully agree with you there. I think they've had their chances, and they let us down too much this season to really be given another one. Because right when we needed them the most, they just simply weren't good enough. And you can look at those stats saying, we had one of the best defenses in the league in terms of goals conceded, but that's just because we put so much emphasis and so many men back there defending for a large part of the season, and their inability kind of prevented us from being that attacking team. Gogamat's going with the 2000 South Korean one, the super sticker. Thank you very much for that. I really, really do appreciate it. And I see some subscribers flying in as well, so please do keep that up. It is also greatly appreciated. But Jamie, just speaking on a few specific targets, Joachim Andersen, first of all, from Lyon, unknown at Fulham last year. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I really, really like him. I think he's a guy, I think, who's comfortable playing on the left side as well. So for me, I do really like him. And obviously, he was part of a Fulham side that struggled. But I think, in the past, there have been players that have got relegated and then they've come up, they've come back into the Premier League and they've done a good job. I think Harry Maguire was a fantastic example of that. He was relegated with Hull, came back up, was fantastic for Leicester City. Andrew Robertson relegated and did a fantastic job, amazing job at Liverpool. So I think in terms of when you write players off just because they've been relegated, I think that's I think that's very small-minded. But for me, Anderson, I thought he was very impressive for a number of occasions this season for Fulham. I remember seeing him playing against us. I thought he had a very good game against us, I think, at the new stadium. So for me, he's a guy I would definitely like to see come into the club. I think Milenkovic was another guy that was kind of mentioned from Fiorentina. He's a guy who, I think he's 25. He's really impressed in Serie A. So he's another guy I'd like to go for as well. So there's obviously players out there. There's definitely those sort of level players that I'd really like to see Spurs go for. But I think those two are very good targets.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, and I think I've always said it. The best indication of why Nikola Milenkovic is a good target for us, and I know he's not maybe at that level that we want, but when we were looking to get Milan Skriniar, and even when they thought they'd hold on to him, they had identified a replacement, and it was Nikola Milenkovic. So they are a very, very similar player in that regard. And we have a super chat from Kev Williams, but before we get to that, let's bring in Danny Kiriakou, the bun. Danny, you're here. How are you getting on tonight?
I'm sorry I'm late, man. So my mum asked me to do something for her. It's quite important, so I really apologise, guys.
No worries at all.
That's right.
Nice to meet you, Jamie. I'm good. How are you, man?
I'm very good, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, very well, thank you. Very well. I'm good.
Good stuff.
How are you, Matt? You all right?
I'm all good. All good. Enjoying the transfer talk. It's been too long since we've had this. I was hoping to have this started when the window opened because we didn't have a manager. We couldn't quite get it done, but glad to be back here doing it.
I'm so glad it's back as well.
Until the rumours get too much, we'll be sick of it in 2 weeks' time. But we have a super chat here from Kev Williams with the £2. And Danny, we'll come to you first one on this. How much will Spurs have to spend in the summer, do you think?
How much will they have to spend, or how much do they have to spend?
Oh, that's good. We'll go with how much do they have to spend, I'd say.
Well, like, if we're being realistic or if we're being sort of delusional, I think delusional, they need to spend over 100 million to really revamp that squad. Maybe 150, really, to be honest, to really get rid of all the Deadwood. And because if you think about it, right, if we get rid of all the Deadwood, you could probably get up to 100 million, if not a bit more, if you get rid of everyone, I think, who we all really want to see go out the door. Realistically, I think they're going to spend probably about 50 to 70 million, I reckon. I reckon they're going to try and get as much out the door as they can, or who they think should go this season. And I think the ones they'll focus on are like the ones with the 1 year left on their contract, those type of players. And then they decide. I think the rest of it will come down to who they get an offer for, really.
Yeah, I think that is it as well. You can look at all the Deadwood that we need to get out, but it's finding teams that will actually take them. That could be a big one for Spurs this summer because there's been some players who've had terrible seasons. Jamie, what would your thoughts be on that one? How much Spurs would need to spend this summer?
Blimey, I mean, that's massive question. Obviously, a lot of money is need to be invested, but I think if you see off the back of that interview with Daniel Levy, for me, it was very concerning. I think it's going to be kind of continuing on the way that we kind of have So I can kind of see Spurs net spending at about £50 million. And even at that, I'd be quite surprised. So I really hope that kind of when in bringing Paratici into the club, we've kind of realised that this really does need a refresh now. I think over the last 2 years, we've been very complacent in terms of really trusting in this squad. And, even after the Champions League final, it was clear that we needed to go and rebuild the team. So I really hope that Paratici is going to be really ruthless in terms of selling. And then Daniel Levy doesn't interfere from there, because that's my biggest worry. Yeah. I think over, the last couple of years, Daniel Levy, he's looked to get the most in terms of prices for players, and then he asks for too much, and then their valuations keep dropping. So I just hope that he's kind of allows Paratici to get on with the work in terms of raising funds. But look, Paratici is going to be working really hard to kind of get players out the door. He's knowing that the funds for transfers and his job is going to be funded by players getting out. So hopefully he's really, really ruthless this summer, and we can get a lot of that Deadwood out the squad, and then we can go and reinvest that. But for me, I think we'll net spend at about £50 million. That would be kind of my prediction.
Yeah, I'd be in and around the same. And it's interesting you both bring up the get rid of the dead books. We'll talk a bit more about that in a minute. But I think I'd be thinking the same. We've heard even back in February, March from Alistair Gold that Spurs will have to sell to buy. Now, I'm hoping that won't be simply, we're going to be in a negative net, or they're going to be making a net profit in the window. I don't think it will go that far. But in terms of actually properly investing and trying to change the squad, I think a lot of that will depend on who we get out. And it's not going to be a case of getting 30 million for this player, 40 million for this player. It's going to simply adding up the 10s and the 15s, whatever we can manage to scrape in for the likes of Sergio Aurier and Moussa Sissoko. And it's going to be difficult. There are some players there that really just aren't going to be attractive to any teams in England. I'd say there are the likes of Aurier and Sissoko who could be attractive to the Italian league or to the French league, and even Harry Winks I think could fit in quite well in the Spanish league, given the style of play they have there. But I'd be thinking like similar to you, Jamie, aside from the money that we get in from transfers, maybe 40-50 net spend, and it's not enough to be where we want to be and to fix where we are going. But it could be what we're in for.
I just think we've been so poor in getting players out the door, and we've just been. I think the one thing in specifically we've been poor at is kind of identifying when to move them on. I think a lot of them we've kind of waited to a point in their Spurs careers where they're no longer attractive to clubs. Whether that be through asking for too much money, and or just kind of being complacent and just wanting to stick with what we've got. So. As we said, it's really got to be a ruthless summer, and hopefully, Daniel Levy does not do any interfering with Paratici in moving players out the door, because that's going to be so crucial in raising funds.
Absolutely, and that's the perfect segue into the next story. As I mentioned, Alistair Gold and a few other sources saying that Fabio Paratici has already told some players to pack their bags, and he's told their agents to look for a new club for them this summer as he begins his clear out to allow Fonseca to build his own squad. And Daniel Levy effectively said that that's true in that bizarre interview we did on Saturday, saying that there will be some players who are told to move on. Now, in terms of what we've heard from players themselves this summer, Sergio Aurier and Moussa Sissoko have both said publicly that they are open to a move away from Spurs, and it seems to be a case of if they're told to go, they will go. But otherwise, they'll be happy to say. I think on Aurier's side, it is probably more steering towards a departure for him. Now, there are stories coming out of France in the last couple of days, and Italy, I think, as well, that PSG are close to signing him for €20 million. However, Gold again today said those are wide in the mark, and a bid has not yet come in. But Danny, if you were Fabio Paratici and you were told you have to get rid of 5 players to build, or to help Fonseca to build some sort of a squad, who are the first 5 players you go for in terms of ones you want to get rid of and how much we'd be able to get in for them?
Do you know what? It's a difficult one, right? Because the thing is, the ones that will raise the most funds would probably be the ones who you really wouldn't want out the squad. But I think for me right now, I think you've got to get rid of the players who've been there the longest, and I think they're the ones that need to go first, because they're the ones that the mentality needs to shift from this longevity that they've had in this club. It's been far too long, and they should have been refreshed a long time ago. So if the 5 players I would go for, it'd probably be Aurier would be the first one, because he's publicly pretty much said he wants to leave. I would say Sissoko. I would actually say Lamela. I think he needs to go. He's got 1 year left in his deal. The other 2, I would probably say Harry Winks. I think Harry Winks is part of the mentality problem we have at Spurs. And if I'm honest, I think out of everyone else in the squad, I think it's a difficult one, right? It's between I can't choose between Dele Alli, Dyer, or Sanchez. And for me, I mean, I'd probably if I'm going to pick any one of them. It's got to be one of the centre backs. And out of the two, I literally can't pick. It's for me, it's just whoever brings in the most money. Because
Mhm.
for me, Dyer is probably worse, but Sanchez is also just as bad. So it's a hard one to say who would you want. And if you look at it, who's going to raise the most money? You never know. An English team could come in for Dyer. They might see something in everyone else that they like. So they
Mhm.
could put in like a 15 million offer or something like that. Sanchez, he might appeal to like European clubs probably a
Yeah.
lot more than sort of Dyer's appeal is to clubs. So I think he's probably your more likely one to sort of raise funds, but probably not what Daniel Levy would expect for him, because obviously he's nowhere near the value of what we paid for him. We paid what 30 million plus add-ons, it was like nearly 42 million. So they're not going to get anywhere near that. They won't even get half. They'll probably get half that if they're lucky. So yeah, that I'd probably say Sanchez just because
Yeah,
of the money.
it's crazy to think we spent over 40 million pounds on him. Like, he's so incompetent. And I always say about him, he's an athlete. He's not a footballer.
Yeah.
And fair play to him, he has those qualities and his pace and all that, but he simply just isn't good enough for this level. Brian Ireland, good to see you there in the live chat as well.
Big up,
Sorry, go ahead.
Brian. Do you know what? Do you know what, Matt? Sanchez reminds me of Sissoko. They just got all the physical attributes, but they've got no football brain. They literally got no brain. They can't pass a ball. They're too scared. It's just honestly, they're like two peas in a pod. Them two.
Absolutely. Turson White in the live chat says all these languages, but the bun chose to speak facts, and I couldn't agree more. All his facts from Danny. Jamie, I'll put the same question to you. If you had
Yeah.
5 players to get rid of, who would you look towards?
I mean, to be honest, I think it's a fairly similar list. I mean, Dyer for me would definitely be at the top. I just think he's been so, he thinks he's a central defender, and I just think he's been really, really poor. So he'd definitely be at the top. I think Eric Lamela is a guy that has to get out the door this summer. He's a guy that's never been able to really kick on. He's never really had that impact in the squad. Harry Winks would be another name on the list. Again, I think we'll continue to keep waiting around for Harry Winks to come good, because I think Daniel Levy is a guy that will see him and think this is a guy that could come good eventually, and then we can get a decent transfer fee for him, or we've got a decent player. But unfortunately, I don't see Harry Winks ever getting back to kind of the levels that he once was, maybe at the start of the Pochettino era. Moussa Sissoko is another guy. Of course, as we said, he's a guy that's gone public in terms of his desire to leave Spurs. So you want players out like that, and then Aurier would be the other one, because I think we desperately need a right back. And I think Alistair Gold, as you might have said, mentioned on his piece that if we are able to get rid of Aurier, then we're getting a new right back. So Aurier would definitely be another name on my list.
Do you know what, Jamie? You're pulling my strings, mate. Because honestly, like when you say I hate Dyer more than I hate Sanchez, and I really want Dyer out of the squad. But I just think that Sanchez will bring in more money, and if I know I don't want him in the squad, but I'd rather have the money so that we can invest in someone better, because then he can just rot on the bench for all I care. Like,
Yeah, no, I agree with you on that. We've got Brian Daigle in the live chat as well. It's Tottenham away galore in that live chat. Good to see you, the two Brians as well. Look, if I have to go with my list, I think I don't think Dele Alli right now is good enough to be in his team, but I have such a soft spot for him, and there's no doubt that the talent is there and the ability is there. It's just a matter of getting that out of him. Now, I don't know enough about Fonseca and his kind of man management style and what he might bring to us in that regard, but if he is that kind of manager who can be that father figure to Dele Alli, I think there is the chance for him to really push on in this role and maybe kind of be that almost like the Lorenzo Pellegrini of Roma for Spurs in that Fonseca role. So I wouldn't ship him out just yet, but that is purely out of deluded optimism more than actual analysis and thinking things like this might turn around. I agree, one of Dyer or Sanchez has to go. I prefer it to be Dyer, but maybe, like you said, Danny, get that bit more in for Sanchez. Harry Winks, again, another player that I defended quite a bit in the past. And, Danny, we were only talking last night after David's stream about the game against Real Madrid when he beat them 3-1 at Wembley, and Winks ran the show. And he went to the Bernabeu and he almost did the same there as well. So he's a player that I suppose does have the ability as well, but it's completely faded. And like I said, he could suit that Spanish game a bit more. Lamela, and like people are laughing at Valencia wanting him for 20-25 million, but he could be a fantastic signing for them.
I really can see Winks going and having a solid career. Not in England, but I think in Spanish football he would suit that down to the ground. So there's the ability in there. As much as he hasn't shown it over the last couple of years, we know that there's a player in there. So I think if he was go to Spain, I'm sure he'd kind of forge out a decent career for himself for sure.
I think it's the physicality of the Premier League which is really doesn't suit Winks. I think you're right. I think I mean, he's always said he wanted to play in Spain. He would like to try Spain because hasn't he got Spanish roots in him as well? I think.
Yeah, he's definitely got some links like that. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So yeah,
Could be
I think he'd be good in Spain, but we'll see.
could be the perfect move there for him. And just
Hopefully.
you mentioned Harry Winks, and Holly Agambar is in the live chat straight away saying, "Oh, Winks talk." I know if you ever want an extra viewer to talk about Winks, and she'll be in that live chat in a matter of seconds. Good to see you in here, Holly. Had the Winks pillow on show everywhere she goes. But yeah, other players, I think Lamela has to go. You know, that thing, there's like a clause in his contract when he signed him from Roma that if he scored 20 goals in the league, we'd have to pay a bonus, and we haven't paid that bonus 8 years later. It's truly baffling.
Is that a true stat? Is that a true?
Oh, that's true. Yeah, I think he scored 16 or 17 league goals.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he scored 17, but I didn't know that was a stat about goal bonus.
Yeah.
God,
Well,
that's
Daniel,
terrible.
if you tell Daniel Levy that, I'm sure he'll kind of, he's getting there. So he might really like to move him on. So maybe that might be an incentive.
Oh God,
I'll
that's
let him
probably
know.
right.
Brian Daigle will give me his email address, and I'll be able to let him know about that. In terms of other players, I think I have 4 there already. In Dyer, Winks, Lamela, 3. It's hard to pick the ones that need to go the most, and that's the worst part. I think actually I forgot Aurier and Sissoko. Probably should put them in there as well, as they said they want to go. There's so many to choose from. It is not.
I think another name that I'd potentially throw out there, and I think maybe controversial, I'm not sure, but Lucas Moura would be a guy I think I'd look to move on. I think you can get decent money for him. I think he's come in this season and had a fairly decent impact, but I think overall, if you see some of the forwards that we have been linked with, I'd certainly swap the likes of Thuram or whoever for a Lucas Moura in the squad. And again, he's a guy who's been here for a long time, so maybe it's time to kind of move out the door.
You know, Jamie, I genuinely think Moura's gone this summer. I genuinely think because I think what you've just said, right, is they're going to look to players who still got a decent contract and who they can get money from. I know Fabrizio Romano has already said that there's 2 clubs in Saudi Arabia, is it? That like him, and I think they'll try force that move onto him because if it's good money and they get good money for him, like you said, someone like Thuram will be a perfect replacement, someone who can play across that line and who's up and coming, he's young, but he's pacey, he's powerful. So yeah, I reckon that's what they'll do. I reckon they'll get rid of him and bring someone else in. I think.
I think the worst part for me is Lucas, when he got into that number 10 role, was probably one of our best players in the last 2-3 months of the season. But in this Fonseca, if it is going to be that 3-4-3, there just isn't really the room for a number 10. And Lucas, he just doesn't work as a wide striker. Even though I know they kind of play a bit more narrow in there, I just don't think it's the place for him anymore. No. And it's upsetting because he looked as though he was finally getting something and finally going somewhere with this. But maybe it is time for him to go as well. And as you mentioned there with Marcus Thuram, just to give the latest update on that. But first of all, there's a super chat from Gogamat with 5,000 South Korean won. Says, thanks for always providing the updates, Matt. I'm enjoying the insights of the panel. Thank you very much, Gogamat, for your kind words and for the support of the channel as well. It is massively appreciated. But the latest on Marcus Thuram is from Mohammed Bouhafsi, who works for RMC Sports, is saying that Marcus Thuram is in talks with Tottenham as he is expected to complete a move away from Borussia Mönchengladbach this summer. Danny, is this a move that you can see Tottenham completing?
I mean, I saw some reports today, right? I don't know if it's true. It's probably not. That he had some sort of clause in his contract for 30 million euros, and that expired today or something, and now it's 40 or 45 million. I mean, if that is true, there's no way we're getting him. That's not going to happen. Daniel Levy's not affording. He's not forking out for that. But if it is true about these 30 million euros and we're still in talks, I think it's what Jamie was touching on. I think I was saying before. I think Moore will be the one to go, one of the first ones to go. Funny enough, because I think if they're going to bring in someone like him, then you can only see a winger going, and the one who raises the most money is him. And then I think if they do get rid of Lamela, which I think they probably will, then they're going to look to bring in someone else. Or it depends, unless they want to keep Steven Bergwijn and use the money to bring in someone else. But yeah, I think he'd be a great player for us. I mean, Go on, Jamie.
I think he was a guy that was actually linked with Juventus while Fabio Paratici was there. So I think he's definitely a guy that obviously likes him. I know he had a very good season for Mönchengladbach. I think he got 8 goals and a number of assists. He's 23 and he can kind of play in a number of positions in the forward line. I think he's mostly a kind of a left-sided forward. So I really like the look of him. So for me,
Yeah,
he's
same.
definitely the guy. And we talk about Daniel Levy not forking out for him, but this is again where it comes down. If he's a guy that Paratici wants, and Paratici is able to go and raise the funds for it, then I think we have to go and back it. And if Paratici really feels as though he's a guy who can fit into Fonseca's system, then that's what we have to go and do. Doesn't matter kind of what portion of the budget is. If he really feels he's the right man, then let's go for it.
Yeah, and that is an encouraging thing that I'm seeing with a few of these links, is that he's ones that Paratici has looked at in the past, or Juventus have been interesting, because the same is there for Nicolas Gonzalez, the winger we're looking for from Stuttgart. Anyone who doesn't know that story, Fabrizio Romano said that Tottenham are planning a move for Stuttgart winger Nicolas Gonzalez. He has been subject to a bid from Fiorentina already, which is €25 million, including add-ons. However, Tottenham may be a more attractive proposition for him if we do go in and actually make that move that we are planning to do. But again, he's one that Fabio Paratici looked at during his time at Juventus, so maybe he is getting a bit more power over these transfers than we've realised. Another super chat here from Darren Cook with the £5. Darren, thank you very much for that. It is, as always, massively appreciated. Says, would you ship out Matt Doherty? And Danny, this is a big question, because if we are going to be playing a more kind of wing-back based system, could this be a season where Matt Doherty really pushes on?
Do you know what, Matt? I'll be honest with you, right? It well could be if he's got the right coach, because I think, right, that the whole squad had massive fitness problems this year. And look, if we're going to be realistic, I really cannot see Matt Doherty leaving this club, because they've got too many other priorities to sort out in this team. Even though we know his ability-wise, and last season he was not great, but I think all the players, to an extent, weren't great in periods, apart from Harry Kane and Son. I mean, even Son had a bad period in the season. So apart from Kane, everyone had a bad patch. And I think a lot of it's down to the fitness. So if you get someone like Fonseca who comes in and he gets the fitness up of all the players, then you might see a different Matt Doherty. And also, like you said, playing in a right wing back role, he might do better, because that's kind of where he played at Wolves, and he'll be more used to it. And yeah, you might see him more attacking, you might see him more confident. And I think he's lost a lot of confidence under Jose Mourinho. I think he kind of did what he did to Luke Shaw, where he just kind of outed him in a bit, and he wasn't not most public, but you could see, like, when he was bad, he just dropped him for games on end, and you just wouldn't be in and around the team. Yeah, and I think he could do. I mean, look, in all honesty, I'd prefer someone else, but I just can't see Spurs doing that this season. So look, if he's going to stay another year, give him another chance, and then and then we'll see what happens next season. But yeah, that's my take on it.
Yeah, no, I quite agree with the majority of what you said there. And Jamie, before we get your opinion on this, I've been seeing on Twitter in the last couple of minutes, Gazzetta dello Sport are saying that Tottenham are interested in signing Lazio forward Joaquin Correa. Lazio are hoping the 26-year-old's performances in the Copa America push the player's value to €40 million, with Spurs currently offering $20 million. So not the most reliable source there from that, but just another story to bring you that Tottenham are reportedly interested in Joaquin Correa. But Jamie, we're hearing, like you mentioned there from Alistair Gold, that if Sergio Aurier has moved on, then Spurs will look to bring in another right back. What does that mean for the trust in Matt Doherty?
Yeah, I mean, look, firstly, it was an odd one that we brought him in, because you saw the way that Jose Mourinho liked to play his fullbacks. He even had the wingers defending most of the time, so it was really odd to kind of see a right back brought in who likes to play so high up the pitch. I mean, we saw kind of in the early stages of Doherty's career at Spurs how high he was pushing up the pitch, and so obviously he was just completely shackled under Mourinho. So I think at Wolves he was very, very impressive player, and I think you saw his numbers. I was quite pleased to see him come to Spurs, and I was excited to see him. But obviously under Jose Mourinho, it just was completely the wrong fit. So if we are having a manager who's going to go and play wing backs and who's going to play three central defenders, then maybe that system will suit him much better. And we can see the player he was at Wolves, but I think as we've said, I think I'd preferably like a better right back brought into the club. Yeah,
like I completely agree. Romano said last week or the week before that Max Aarons is a potential target for us if we do go for a right back. And I think there's one that a lot of fans will be looking for as well, is Zeki Celik from Roma. I know had a poor start to the Euros against Leonardo Spinazzola, another one of our targets at the weekend. But there are definitely good options out there that are better than what we have at our disposal already. We are going to talk about the one thing none of us want to talk about, which is the future of Harry Kane. But before we do get into that one, I just want to say there's over 500 people watching, so please do smash that like button. Again, it's completely free and it really helps out the channel and gets more and more people into the stream. So we're on 153. Let's see if we can get that to 200. And as always, make sure to hit that subscribe button if you do want more content like this as we go the whole way through the transfer window. We're on the road to 10k before the season starts, which may be optimistic, but I have a feeling we can get that done. So please do support the channel if you haven't already. And look, Harry Kane, lads, we don't want to talk about it. It's a tough one to talk about. I think it's the worst year to talk about it, because for the first time there is kind of that feeling of, well, he absolutely wants to leave the club. So, you know, are we actually able to hold him in for another year? And the latest from Fabrizio Romano on this one, it was last week, I think he said that, essentially said, look, Harry Kane does want to leave. Manchester City are set to push for the striker. Duncan Castles has even gone one step further and said that Man City have already made a bid to try and attract Kane, or to try and convince Spurs to let him go. But look, Danny, I suppose the biggest question to ask is, do you think Harry Kane will leave Spurs this summer?
It's a hard one, man. I think he probably wants to leave. Whether the club actually sell him is a completely different thing. Also, it is telling a little bit in what Daniel Levy said in his interview, because obviously he didn't want to discuss Kane's situation, and he's saying he will do what's best for the club, and obviously his little mind games he likes to play, and his little illusions. But yeah, I mean, it's a difficult one. I think if the money comes in that he wants, he's gone. The money that doesn't come in, even though he wants to go, he will stay another season, and then we'll see what happens next season. But it could be a make or break for Kane if you think about it, because the only other option he's got. So if Man City don't get Kane this summer and they decide to go for another striker, just say for example, for argument's sake, they go for like Martinez, Lautaro Martinez at Inter Milan. If they go for someone like him who's cheaper, who could be cheaper than Harry Kane, right? That's their striker now for the next 5, 6, 7 years potentially, right? So that's Kane's ship sailed for Man City. So then the only club in England who could afford him, and potentially next year who actually will be looking for a striker, is Man United. And if they turn out if they don't have a good season next season, then is he going to want to go there if he's not guaranteed trophies? I mean, maybe he will, just for a change of scenery, and see if he can do it, because they're probably in a better stage at where they're sort of their growth is at the moment, and their sort of position at where they are. Yeah, but I think it could be a case where Daniel Levy will hold him prisoner unless he gets the money he wants, and that's just the sad reality of it, really. I mean, obviously, I'd love him to stay one more season, just to see what he'd do in a Fonseca team if they can get the right players playing with him. But it remains to be seen, so we'll see.
It is a weird situation when we're hoping Daniel Levy will do one of his old tricks and keep Kane hostage. And look, I've said it in the past, I think if Kane wants to leave, perhaps it could be best for us if he does leave, because the last thing you want is a player who doesn't want to be at the club. And as much as Kane won't down tools, he's such a professional. The feeling of him having any sort of disdain or ill feeling towards Spurs is one that is deeply concerning to me. But Jamie, what are your thoughts on Kane's future?
Yeah, I mean, I've always kind of said I don't think his opinion really in this whole situation matters, that being Kane. I think ultimately it comes down to kind of what the offer is on the table. As we said, I think if the offer is right, and for me, I think if you're above 120 million pounds, if that offer is above 120 million pounds, then I think potentially he will be sold. But for me, I do struggle to see it. I think Manchester City are the only club, definitely the only club that are going to be able to put that sort of money on the table. And then even then, I kind of question whether they will go and do that. Obviously, as we said, there are younger options out there as well, and potentially, so that might potentially be more attractive to them. But I just think on the flip side as well, I mean, look, we know how desperately we need to kind of really move on with this squad. So potentially, if you look at it on the flip side, you see the way that Liverpool moved on Coutinho for a huge sum. But I think, when you see how important Harry Kane is to us, and then of course he really feels like he is kind of the maybe aside from Heung-min Son, he kind of feels like the only one that really feels a connection to. So I think there's a huge risk in terms of selling him. And then of course, do you trust the guys at the club to go and reinvest that money? We don't know yet with Paratici, and then you don't know how kind of Daniel Levy will be at that sort of money. So personally, I think he'll be here, and I don't worry too much about him if he is desperate to leave, and I do think he is desperate to leave, and he doesn't. he doesn't get that move. I can't see him. He's not going to kick up a fuss. And for me, he's too much professional. I think he's got too much love for the club, and I can't see it affect him at all. If he doesn't get that move and he is really that desperate to leave.
I mean, Daniel Levy could sell him like a white lie again, right? And just say, look, we're going to try and push on this season. And they've got Paratici now. They might sit him down in a room, them two together, and hold his hands and say, we're going to be all right, Kane. Don't worry. Do you know what I mean? Like, it literally, and then all of a sudden, they don't go and invest what they might have said to him they will do just to get him there for a season. Obviously, then you create someone who's potentially going to be unhappy, but look, like you said, Jamie, I can't. Harry Kane's too much of a professional. He loves Tottenham. He loves Tottenham. If all he wants to do is win titles at Tottenham, but Daniel Lee, the reason why he wants to move because he feels he can't do it anymore at Tottenham because he doesn't feel the club are progressing. Do you know what? Right, just to touch one more thing before you say something, Matt.
I think have we lost Danny there? Oh, you back?
Oh, hello.
I think you're back there.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I don't know what happened there. I was just going to say, right, I don't think Levy will sell him unless it's for over 150 million. And the other thing I worry about is Chelsea do want a striker, right? Now, look, if Chelsea were to come in and put a bid, right, more than anyone else would have put in on the table, and it's like 170 million, 175 million, I genuinely can't see Daniel Levy turning that down because it's too much money to turn down. And I think there'll be a sort of a bit of a push from Tottenham's end to say, look, I think you should go. It's a lot of money for you, and for me, I know people say, look, Kane won't do it to us fans, but the problem is it might not be Kane's choice in the end because it might be the only offer on the table where he could actually go. And again, it might be beneficial for him because he's still in London. He doesn't have to uproot his whole family and stuff like that. And I know it'll be the worst thing for all of us Spurs fans, but I genuinely think if that was to happen, I think that would be forced more on Daniel Levy in the board's end because they're like, it's too much money to say no to. And Chelsea are the only ones who'd be silly enough to pay that sort of money because they know Daniel Levy won't do business with Abramovich unless it's a too good to refuse sort of thing.
Yeah. I agree. And the other thing about sitting him down as well and kind of convincing him, I think we for sure we did that with him last summer as well.
Yeah,
so,
I think you're right.
The problem is we've had our chance now, and I think Harry Kane will be pushing for a move until the end of the summer. Again, as I said, I think if the window does close and he's still a Spurs player, he'll be very professional. But unfortunately, I do see him really pushing for that move. But I mean, look, firstly, I really can't see him going to Chelsea. But as you said, it would have to be like silly money. Honestly, it would be really silly money for Harry Kane to go there.
Like Danny said, I think only Chelsea would be stupid enough to pay that. And my kind of hope in this one is Chelsea now apparently pushing for Erling Braut Haaland. I don't think that's a move that Manchester City would specifically go for. But if Spurs are going to hold out for upwards of £150 million, as much as you can look at it from a footballing point of view, and that top scorer, top assister in the league last season, one of the best strikers in the world, I'd say second only to Robert Lewandowski. You also have to look at it from a business and an investment point of view. And he's a 28-year-old striker who has almost bi-yearly ankle injuries, who misses because of that 12, 13, 14 games a season. So is that enough of an investment, enough of a return on the investment for Manchester City to get 2-3 years out of him at the top level for 150 million? I'm personally not sure that it is, but I think that could just be me trying to make myself feel better and to convince myself that he could be staying at Spurs next season. But look, I'm the same. I do think he will be in a Spurs jersey next year. The main reason for that is what we're hearing is this entire thing for him in terms of thinking he'll get his move away is based on a gentleman's agreement with Daniel Levy, and straight away you're on the back foot if that's what you're depending on. And as much as it may seem harsh to say, he signed that 6-year contract. Maybe he's just going to have to honour a bit more of that than he hopes. But I think we will see Kane still at Spurs next season. Paddy Hart in the live chat, good to see you, says only team will be City. Spurs and Chelsea don't do business and have not done it for a long time. And that is as well my kind of feeling. Romano also saying that Harry Kane won't leave England. He wants to stay in England, and Manchester City probably the most likely destination. He almost said as much in that interview with Gary Neville when he said he wanted to play with Kevin De Bruyne. We've got Cody Mack in the Irish chat in the live chat as well. Good to see you, lads. Can
I ask you boys a question?
Yeah.
Do you think if Liverpool were to put up the money that Levy would want, do you think he'd go to Liverpool? I know they won't put the money, but it just as a question, do you think he would?
I would have thought so. I mean, I still feel as though that I think the one thing they have really missed in terms of is a really, really clinical centre forward. I mean, obviously Salah's done a fantastic job in kind of, producing the goals, and then of course they've had Mane chipping in, but I think they've always kind of really missed that striker. So I feel as though he'd kind of really feel that he'd be the right guy to go and fit in. So for sure, I can kind of see him going to Liverpool.
Yeah, I agree.
I personally think it wouldn't happen. Because the reason he wants to leave Spurs is to win trophies. And the only club that he could actually go to in England that will guarantee him those trophies, in my opinion, is Manchester City. And if he goes to City, I think that's the league done for the next couple of years. But if he goes to Chelsea or Liverpool, he's still in a situation. Of course, he's in a better position to win trophies. But with the strength of teams in England right now, with City getting better and better, Chelsea now coming into the mix with Thomas Tuchel being so good, and Liverpool, despite their poor season, still being right up there at the top level. There's just too many big teams competing for these trophies to be guaranteed them at any place other than Manchester City. Yeah, and I personally think he'd hold out at Spurs for another year and then try and get that move to City before he go to the likes of Chelsea or Liverpool. But again, that could just be me trying to make myself feel better.
I think the Pep being at City as well. I think it does. Yeah. You know, the more I think about it, I think City really is kind of that dream destination for Harry Kane, working under Pep Guardiola. Playing alongside Kevin De Bruyne, and then of course you said that guarantee of trophies for sure. Yeah. And then of course you'd have that very special achievement of being able to end Manchester City's wait for that Champions League. You know, you just adding Harry Kane to that side, I'm sure that would be kind of the final piece that they'd need to go and win that Champions League. So I think the more you think about it, I think that really is that dream destination for Harry Kane, unfortunately.
It's like he's the final piece of the puzzle for Man City, isn't it? It's like he will just fit in perfectly. I think you're right. I think both of you are right. I think that's the only place I think he really wants to go. And look, he said it in the interview, that long interview with Gary Neville. He said, look, he's not in a rush to win trophies. He feels that he can still be at the top level for 7-8 years. He said, wasn't it? Something like that. So. I mean, like, if he's saying that, he's not. It's like he's saying, I'm not in a rush to move just yet, but I need to have that discussion, because if Tottenham are not going in the right direction, then I need to start looking at assessing what I want to do with my career. He didn't come out and say, I'm going to have a discussion because I want to leave. He just said, we just need to have a talk to see what's going on. So
I think that interview was definitely blown up. I remember going and watching the interview, and I saw the initial kind of quotes on Twitter and stuff, and it was all very, very much. It was just kind of selected, and if you saw the different individual bits, it seemed a really drastic interview. But actually, if you go and watch it, it definitely wasn't kind of that. But yeah, I mean, for me as well, I look at Harry Kane, and you look at kind of what a fantastic athlete he is. I think he is a guy that could go on for a number of years. I can see him going on to his mid-30s for sure, still being kind of a top-level player, despite the injuries. I think that would just be something you'll have to play through. But I think he just is really, really fantastic athlete, and that will kind of stand him in good stead. You see the way Ronaldo has been able to continue on in his career, and just because he's such a fantastic athlete. So I can kind of see Kane being in the same boat, and we'll see Harry Kane being real top player for a number of years.
Yeah, I think he will be. And he's probably going to go off and be an NFL kicker even when he retires from football as well, knowing his It is. He wants a bit of everything. And there's a few more things I want to touch on before we do wrap up. There's two very good questions here in the chat, which I'm going to send as quick fire questions to two of you. Jamie, I'll come to you first. Who would you take from City in player plus cash deals? That's coming from Trevor Kane, who said he's new subscribers. Thanks for that, Trevor.
Oh my goodness. I mean, you'd have to take a central defender. I mean, I think Laporte's obviously someone that's kind of been pushed aside, but I mean, my goodness me, why would that wilder play like that when it comes to Tottenham? I think Laporte would kind of be one that I can't even say realistic, can I? But obviously he's been a guy that's kind of been discarded. So for me, I think Laporte would definitely be one. Just off that as well, I think one that was definitely mentioned was Jesus. He's not a guy I'd like to see coming to replace Harry Kane. I think that when he's been, he's never really been able to cement his place in that City side, even with Aguero injured. I think there's definitely been a reason for that. So he's definitely a guy that I wouldn't look to bring in. But I mean, it's very difficult to see us being able to attract players away from City, and I can't see why they'd want to come to Spurs, unfortunately.
Yeah, that is probably the sad truth of it. Danny, any players you take?
Yeah, I agree with Jamie. I think Laporte, and maybe none of them are going to come to Spurs. Let's be real.
Scott
like,
Carson might come to Spurs.
Yeah, Scott. Yeah.
One more Champions Leagues in our squad.
Yeah, maybe some other players as well from their youth systems that they might try to chuck over. But yeah, honestly, yeah. Ideally, I'd love Laporte and Mahrez. I'd love them two to be at Spurs. But I just can't see any of them wanting to down tools to come to Spurs. I mean, and also you got to remember these guys are on astronomical wages. They're like on like so for them to come to Spurs, they're gonna have to drop their wages. And I can't see Daniel Levy when he's saying he's got to save pennies and they count the pennies. I don't see that happening. Yeah, it's very difficult. He's probably the only one. And I would, you know what? I would take Jesus, but not as a main striker. I love him as a backup striker, as a super sub, because I think he's a good super sub type player. Sorry, I think he's a good super sub type player, but not as a main striker.
Ferran Torres would maybe be a name that I'd throw out there. I think he's not had a great deal of opportunities for at Man City, but I think he's a young guy as well, and I think he's probably got a future there. But I think there's another name that I just can't see coming to Spurs, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's how far we've fallen from a couple of years ago being in a Champions League final now to what player would even want to join us. It's baffling. I was going to give a question to V. We're going to go with a one-word answer on this one because it's a tough question and I want to make it even tougher. But Cody Mack says, if you are Man City, who do you want for 3 years, Kane or Messi? Jamie?
Kane.
Yeah,
Danny?
Kane, 100%.
Easier than I thought it was going to be, to be honest.
Yeah.
I love the confidence in our own players. Look, quick guys, before we do wrap up, I want to get your thoughts on Juan Foyth, who, of course, during the week made his loan move permanent to Villarreal in a deal worth about £13 million. Of course, it was a clause that was in the contract from last year, so Spurs didn't have much of a say in it this time around. But after winning the Europa League, Foyth will move over there permanently. Danny, sad to see him go?
Do you know what? To be honest with you, I'm not glad that he went, but I think it was a good move for him. I don't think that he suited the Premier League. I think he just wasn't. I think he was just. He just like, if you watch him at Villarreal this season, right? He had good games. He had a lot of good games, but he also was inconsistent at times. And he did some of the stuff that he did at Spurs, where he was a bit rash at times and he made silly tackles, and it just reminded me a little bit of like. He's got a bit of Aurier in him where he can be a bit rash sometimes.
Yeah.
You saw it in the Europa League final as well, where he should have got a red card really near the end of the game.
Yeah.
But yeah, look, I think the Spanish football suits him to a T. I think the Premier League's too physical for him. If he bulked up and put on like 3 stone or something like that, 3 or 4 something like that, then I'd say okay, maybe he might be good for the Premier League. But yeah, he's good. He's very good in the ball, but I think he's defensive awareness sometimes lets him down, and I just don't think that he's right for Tottenham, especially if you're trying to compete for the top 4. So I think it's good for him. All I say on that is it's a shame we couldn't get more, and because of the season he's had at Villarreal, it's a shame that Tottenham only put in a 13 million euro clause, and it wasn't like 15 million. But I think Ali Gold was saying though they did get like 3 or 4 million from the loan last year as well, so the whole total of the deal was worth about 17 million pounds. So that's not bad. It's not bad for him if you think about it.
Yeah, I suppose it all adds up that much. And like you were saying about the rash side of his game, on his debut he gave away two penalties against Wolves. He picked up that red card against Bournemouth as well in that poor game towards the end of the season a couple of years back. But Jamie, what are your thoughts on Foyth's departure?
Yeah, I did like him. I think there was definitely aspects to his game where he was, he was kind of an attractive player. He was able, obviously, his ability on the ball was very impressive. But as we said, I think he was, he did suit Spanish football more. And we've got to remember he's only gone to Villarreal as well. It wasn't like he went to one of the top clubs. So I think maybe there was a little bit of overhype from kind of our supporters. I'm fairly glad we've got a fee for him, and it will give us funds to kind of go and get, going and sign players in important positions. I think the fee was disappointing because I think, a talent like that who's had a season like he has at Villarreal, you would have kind of hoped for a bit more. But overall, I think I'm fine with him going.
Yeah, I'd be along the same lines, to be honest. I think to some extent he was a victim of Pochettino thinking he was a right back and trying to change him into that position. I think maybe he would have been better as maybe the right-sided centre-back of a 3. I just don't think he had the pace and kind of the ability on the ball, or the crossing ability especially, to be a right back, but it probably is the best route for him and for Spurs. Super chat here from Eric Cooper with the $20. Eric, thank you a million for that. You're an absolute legend. Says thanks for all the great information, guys. You're absolutely my link to the club on this side of the Atlantic. Well, Eric, I'm glad we can help in some way. That's always the best thing to hear on the channel. But thank you as well again for the support there. It is greatly appreciated. As Cody says, every one of you smash a like for the boys. We're still on over 500 live viewers. To see what our likes are looking at. We're on 223 likes, so let's get that up to 250 as quickly as we can. But before we do wrap up, we're going to give the lads a chance to plug their socials. And look, Jamie, I'm sure you don't need to come on my tiny channel and plug your Daily Hotspur page, but let people know where they can find you on social media.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Daily Hotspur on Twitter. No, of course, it's been an absolute pleasure to come on your channel, Matt. So yeah, I'm Daily Hotspur on Twitter, and yeah, on YouTube as well. I've got I'm Daily Hotspur on YouTube as well.
Yeah, everyone make sure to go and check that out for sure. And Danny, let us know what's coming up.
Yeah, so hopefully before the Premier League starts next season, we're going to have a YouTube channel which is actually called In The Box. So it is there, but there's no content just yet. We're going to be planning a debate show to start off with, and it's going to be based with just the Premier League, basically, different fans from different teams, very, very stupid, delusional people. So if you like watching imbeciles on camera, then yeah, please come over. Yeah, we're going to have a dedicated Spurs show, so we're going to get all these lovely people in the Spurs family that we have. And Jamie, if you feel free, if you want to come on when we do start, by all means, would love to have you on. And yeah, just keep an eye on some news and just follow the Twitter handle, which is below here, which is In The Box _TV.
Absolutely. Again, I highly recommend everybody goes over and follows Danny all over the place. A very good channel coming up there that I'm looking forward to watching as well. So their links will be added to the description as soon as the stream ends. I apologise, I forgot to put them in beforehand, so I do apologise for that. But you can blame the referee in the Spain game for adding 6 minutes. A lot of people saying thanks for the stream. It is our absolute pleasure. I have to, of course, thank the two lads for coming on today, making a fantastic stream, staying here for the hour. Thank you very much to the two of you lads. Really do appreciate it. Everybody, as always, make sure to smash that subscribe button for more Tottenham Hotspur transfer talk coming up throughout the transfer window, and as well some streams in the next couple of days when Paulo Fonseca is finally announced as the Tottenham manager. But for now,